Welcome, everyone. Steve Schlueter, MAPS coach, author of Rescue Dogs in Real Estate, and the co-coach with Tammy Youngst for Never Ending Referrals. Hey, welcome to 3 Simple Steps to Supercharge Your Revenue Engine for 2022. We're going to get started in just a bit. While we're letting folks get through the waiting room and come in, we've got about a minute. Let's hear who's out there. Let's go to the chat. Tell us where you're from, where people hanging out from today. Let's get the chat warmed up. Make sure you know how to find it. And I saw Kimberly Rosado out there. Hey, Kimberly, glad you're with us today. She was one of our superstar interviews on Never Ending Referrals here a while back. So great to have you with us, Kimberly. And that was like one of our best interviews. So thank you for that.
Great to be here. Hi, Steve. Thank you.
Hey there. Well, welcome. We got Milwaukee. Hey, Jessica, Brian in Charlotte, Jenny, Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to be in Nashville on Thursday afternoon. My daughter and grandson live in Nashville, so actually Murfreesboro, so I'll be in the neighborhood. Joseph, Madison, Alabama. Hey, we got Austin's in the house. Kentucky. I trust you guys are recovering, John, from all the tornadoes, and everybody's ready to bounce back there. We got our Canadian friends. They're going to explore the database process with us today. Hey, Canada, welcome, Kelly. All right, guys, we're going to get started here in just a minute, and let me give you a little housekeeping before we kind of get the show on the road. And again, my name's Steve Schlueter. I'm the co-coach along with Tammy Youngst of Never Ending Referrals. And in fact, let me go ahead and I'm going to make sure we spotlight myself so any overtalk doesn't kind of interfere. And today we're here to Tammy's on the road today, so I'm going to be flying solo. With that in mind, what I'm going to ask that you do is we're going to leave plenty of time on the end for question and answer. And I might pause in between for some Q&A. And I love the fact that we're not on webinar, that we're in meeting, and you'll have the opportunity, if you like, to raise your hand. There's a reactions button down at the bottom. And when we get to Q&A, if you'll hit the reactions button and just raise your hand, there'll be a little bar there. You can come into the conversation and we'll answer your questions. And we'll also have the chat as a resource. Flying solo today. I don't have anybody managing the chat as we go. So if you'll just kind of hold questions till the end, be specific so we can get to work on this. So let's go to work. And first off, I trust everybody's having great holidays, and man, we're ready and eager to have an amazing 2022. And, it's a really interesting business that we're in, this thing called residential real estate, or even if it's commercial real estate that you serve. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Started in my early 20s selling real estate, and, then on into a leadership role with Keller Williams. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But I think about this business we're in, and real estate. I heard somebody describe it recently, and they said it's the hardest, simplest business I've ever worked in. And, they said, it can fuel feelings of rejection at times. And at times it can become incredibly discouraging because this person was talking about, cold calls and knocking on doors and sometimes fighting these huge feelings of rejection that sometimes we have to battle through. The buying of leads that so many people have gone down that path, only to find that the leads maybe aren't that good, or they have a long nurture window, and it just becomes sometimes discouraging. And here's the exciting part. There really is a better way. And that's what we're here to dive into today. But even the part of, we're going to talk mostly about database today and relationships, but even that is difficult for many people because we don't want to show up as that hungry salesperson. We fear the judgment we might get from our peers or our friends or our sphere of influence. And today we're going to put all that into a context that's going to help you build and maintain and nurture powerful relationships and really succeed with a database at a whole new level as we go into 2022. Now, here's the exciting part of this. And I gave you kind of a teaser in the title of this program. January 1 is right upon us. And for some, January 1 is really exciting. And for some, January 1 is a little drudgery. And that is, we start asking this question, can I do it again? Or the things that I did going to pay off again? If some of it was just maybe pure luck, how's it going to work? Am I going to be able to produce the same results? And the path we're going down today is so that January 1, 2023, when you wake up, I want you to be able to know where your first 24, 36, 50, 150 transactions are coming from, depending on what your goals are. And we'll talk about that as a stated goal and maybe where that comes from as we dig into this today. But wouldn't that be great to wake up and have this crystal clarity that I've now built a business that has some level of predictability? And that's the path we're beginning today. And we're going to cover 3 simple steps. And to get started, I'm going to pull up the screen. Let me go to a PowerPoint. And again, if you guys are joining us late, we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. Write down your questions. Be specific about your questions. So, because I'm flying solo today, don't have anybody in the chat. We'll use the reactions button and to raise your hand later to have you ask your questions. So let me go to the PowerPoint. And here we go. All right, I think we've got it there. And so 3 simple steps to supercharge your revenue engine in 2022. And, and it starts with this. And whoops. And I want you to draw this out for yourself. And this is something called the trust triangle. And I first got exposed to this was a conversation between Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And it was during Mega Leadership. And this came right from the Harvard Business Review. There was an article on this thing called the trust triangle, and it was related to leadership. It was about how leaders genuinely create authentic, real followers. And the way they did that was they built trust, relationships at a foundation of trust. And yet, what is the recipe for building relationships that really have a foundation of trust? And that's what this little trust triangle does. And when I heard Gary and Jay talk about this, it was very clear to me. I said, this is the 3 steps to building powerful referral relationships. These are the 3 steps to making sure that you create real advocates in your business. And so I'm going to go through these and have you write them down. Then I'm going to take the screen down. We're going to talk about them. And so let's go through this for just a second. So at this point on the lower left, whoops, hang on. This point on the lower left, logic. Logic says, I know you can do it. Your reasoning and judgment are sound. So in other words, they know that you know your business. They know that you know real estate. They know that you know real estate better than anybody else. Then on the empathy side, it's I believe you care about me and you care about my success. And then all of this, let's make sure, is audio coming through okay? Monica lost audio. Want to make sure y'all are good. Good here. Okay. All right. Monica, you might just have a connection issue. So there you go. Thank you. So all this has to happen in a way that's authentically you. They have to experience the real you. And this is the challenging piece of it. In Never Ending Referrals, we devote, almost 45 minutes of one session to how do you succeed being your authentic self? Because let's face it, if you're a high assertive like me, the last thing you want to do really is call and have small talk chit chat calls with your database. It doesn't feel authentic. And by the way, if it doesn't feel authentic to you, it doesn't feel authentic to them. Every single person in your database, every single person is equipped with something called a BS detector, believability scale. You thought I was being naughty, didn't you? A believability scale. And by the way, it's not even conscious, it's unconscious. They're somewhere in that conversation where they're going, that was weird. That didn't feel right. That didn't feel like Steve. Or they don't even compare it to even feeling like Steve. It just felt weird. And so if something feels weird, it's taking away the ability to build this thing called trust. And so let's go back to this for a second. So we're going to dive into one strategy for each of these today. One logic strategy. We're going to go into an empathy strategy, and we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called authenticity. And the logic piece, being a high assertive behaviorally, I would love to just beat them up with logic, and just have a campaign that was all about numbers and statistics and look at me and all the things we've sold and our successes, and never really have personal conversations. I would prefer that behaviorally, and yet it's just one point of building trust. Now, I'm going to have to figure out a way of how do I get the empathy into the relationship in an authentic way that feels real. And yet, let's talk about the logic side for just a second. The logic side is where they have to see the evidence of you as a real estate expert. And this is where your 36, 40, 52 touches, however many touches you're doing, has to be designed in a way that's positioning you as that local trusted expert. Now, the empathy side, well, we're going to talk a little bit deeper about that. And yet here's the thing that I want you to write down about empathy is it's all about conversations. It's not about scripts. I want to be clear on that. It's about conversations. And it will explain the difference here in just a little bit. Early in my career, we used to talk about scripts and dialogues. And somewhere along the line, the concept of a dialogue around a script got lost, and people just talked about scripts and they were going to script everybody. And the reality is scripts are important. And yet, if you don't create a dialogue around it, you don't have real, authentic conversations. And it's the real, authentic conversations where people feel that you care about them. And you can still have a script built within it, and yet you have to have a dialogue. And we'll talk about that here in a few moments. And then authentic you, we're going to dig deeper on that as we go. But here's the next point I want to make, and I'm going to go back to the screen share for just a moment. And I want you to write this down. And it comes from Susan Scott, the author of Fierce Conversations. She said, the conversation is the relationship. The conversation is the relationship. And there's really no avoiding it. And I want to share with you, I want to share with you a story to demonstrate this, I should say, about how the conversation is so vital to really building a fundamentally sound, trusted business advisor relationship. And I'm going to share with you, and some of you have probably heard my story. if you've taken Never Ending Referrals in Bold 2.0, we had done that before COVID hit. We shared this story, and it's my story of driving down the interstate one afternoon, and I get a call, and you've all had it happen. On your caller ID, a name shows up, and you're going, who the heck is that? And I must know them because they're showing up on my display, and yet you can't place it. And so I'm driving down the interstate, and on my display, the phone rings, and on my display, it says Barbara DeLamo. Now, it's a 210 area code. I live in San Antonio. 210 is a San Antonio area code. And I'm going, Barbara DeLamo. I can't place it. I must know them. They're in my contacts. So I hit the button on my steering wheel, and I take the call. And I got to imitate Barbara just for effect. I'm sorry, guys, but I got to imitate Barbara. And Barbara says, and I answer the phone and go, well, hi, Barbara. How can I serve you? And she goes, well, hi, Steve. And I'm going, well, hi, Barbara. And what's up? She goes, well, I was calling to wish you happy birthday. Now, by the way, guys, it's like July 8th. And my birthday's not till July 31st. By the way, write that down. Put me in your database. Send me a birthday card. My birthday's not till July 31st. And I said, well, Barbara, thanks, but you're a little early. I said, my birthday's not till the end of the month. She goes, I know, I wanted to be the first one. She goes, am I the first one? I said, you sure are. Now, here's the thing I want you to know. At this point, I still have no clue. Who the heck is Barbara? And she's wishing me happy birthday, and she's all cheery. And then she says, I took the first bold you guys ever did in San Antonio, that first bold in 2009 that you coached. She goes, are you still out coaching bold? And I said, yeah, I sure am. And she asked about bold and how that was going. And we had a nice conversation about bold. And she said, when you were doing that bold here in San Antonio, you had a girlfriend that lived here in San Antonio that sponsored one of our events. Did you ever move to San Antonio? I know you talked about doing that. You're originally from the area. And I said, yeah, I've been back in San Antonio for a couple of years now. And she goes, man, I was a day late and $1 short. And she said, what are you loving about San Antonio? And we talked about a few things. She gave me a recommendation for a brunch place, which was great. And we had a nice conversation about San Antonio, all very brief. And then she said, well, gosh, what have you guys been doing for fun? We had a brief conversation about activities. And then she asked this big question. She goes, what kind of big plans you and Shelly have coming up? And we talked about a trip to Egypt and a trip to Russia. And the whole conversation was 6 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. And I left that conversation feeling completely connected with Barbara. Now, I want you to go back for just a second to what I said about the conversation is the relationship. And I didn't, if you'd called me 1 minute before and said, who's a great referral for San Antonio, it would not have been Barbara DeLamo. Now, by the way, I have since referred her, but it would not have been Barbara. Now, if you called me a minute after, week after, month after, it'd have been Barbara. But here's the interesting thing. I had this epiphany after I hung up. I realized that the caller ID didn't say Barbara DeLamo. It said maybe Barbara DeLamo. And any of you who have an iPhone, one of those devices, know that if it says maybe, it means they're in your email. And so out of curiosity, that afternoon I got home, I went and pulled up my email, put in a search for Barbara DeLamo, and I found that I had been getting an email from Barbara every 3 weeks for 7 years. And I want you to let that sit for just a second. I get a call from Barbara DeLamo on my dash, and the name means nothing. I can't put a connection to it. I have no idea who this individual is. And then I go back and I realize, wow, I've been getting an email from her every 3 weeks for 7 years. Now, here's the rest of the story. The rest of the story is I get an email from her maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks later. What do you guys think I did with that one? You're right. I opened it. I actually opened it up and I looked at it and I glanced at it. I didn't read it word for word, and yet I spent a few moments on it. A couple of weeks later, got another one, opened it as well. And this is the perfect demonstration of the conversation is the relationship. I'm quite certain Barbara had launched a campaign, an email campaign, thought she was doing all the right things, had me on a touch system, where I was getting 18 to 20, or so emails a year, and that was going to develop and nurture that relationship over the years, and it didn't. So back to that point, the conversation is the relationship. The conversation makes everything else work better. I now have a connection. I'm in flow with Barbara. So I'm going to go back to the screen here for a second, and I want to share with you a tactic for making sure those vital conversations with your people, they take place. I know Kimberly Rosado on here, that she lives by this next little piece. She goes, I never skip this, and tell me if I'm wrong, Kimberly. But it's a little thing we call doing the database too. And it's something we developed. There's a long backstory behind it that we developed for my market centers after realizing that people weren't having, these vital conversations that they really needed. Whoa, hang on. Cancel. Almost left the meeting. We don't want to do that. It's a little thing called do the database too. So how are you going to make sure that you create the discipline of making sure that these vital contacts happen with your database? The conversations happen. So these conversations will build the logic side, but more importantly, they'll build the empathy side. Her emails would have done a nice job of building the logic side of the conversation, seeing her as knowledgeable, seeing her expertise around our local market. And yet I never looked at them because I didn't know she cared about me and cared about my success until we had a conversation. And by the way, it was authentic. It was real. I don't know if the birthday thing was just her being fast on her feet and she really thought it was my birthday. I never asked her. And yet, here we go. So DTD2, and by the way, it stands for doing the database too. And I'm going to put actually in the chat a link to the DTD2 schedule. And the DTD2 schedule takes your database by last name. And there's a process for tagging your database that we teach in Never Ending Referrals and also in Bold. For setting up your database this way. And by the way, January 3rd is the beginning of the DTD2 cycle, and it starts with A and W. So everybody whose last name ends in A and everybody whose last name ends in W gets the phone call. And there's some reasons we did it this way. I mean, you can go into Command and you can set up a quarterly call smart plan. And yet if it throws 300 people in one day for you to make a call, it often doesn't happen. It's easy to dismiss them and delay them. There's another thing that happens around this, and it's something called call bias. When we first introduced DTD2 to Bold, the feedback I got from the Bold coaches was, there was this discipline we asked of the student, and that was, when you're going through your A's, whether it's in your phone or in your database, and you have them in there, and you come to Anderson and Mary Anderson, and I go, I don't remember Mary, or I haven't spoken to Mary in 5 years. You make the call anyway. There's a discipline around this where you choose to stay out of call bias. If they show up on that schedule, and every single Bold week, we would hear from somebody say, I called somebody in whatever week's DTD2 it was that week, and I got a deal. I was in Atlanta and somebody was calling their I&Qs that week, and somebody, they said I would not have called, but I stuck to the discipline because that was the deal I made getting in Bold, that I was going to follow it 100%. That's what I told my coach. And I got $1 million listing and a $1.3 million buy side from one call. And that if I wasn't adhering to this, I would have skipped over and I would not have called them. I would have had a bias of whether they really wanted to hear from me or how that relationship was. And because she picked up the call, $2.3 million in business from one conversation. And so DTD2 becomes this little tool to make sure you stay on a schedule. But let me tell you what else about it really works at a high level. My one-on-one coaching clients that I had over the years, when we first introduced this, and I introduced it to them, and I wouldn't coach with you one-on-one unless you would commit to DTD2. It was the most important thing you could do for your business. And I said, if you don't want to do that, I'm not the right coach for you. That's okay. I want you to have the most success you can have in your business. I'm going to ask you to do this. And what they began to love about this little procedure was it gave them a beginning and end each week. So January 3rd, when you guys go to work and you start calling your A's and W's, you call, let's say you have 50 A and W's. You call through them. And let's say you call through on a Monday, you call through all 50, you talk to 15. Well, that's 35 you didn't talk to. What we teach in Never Ending Referrals is that on Wednesday, you're going to call the remaining 35 you didn't connect with. And let's say you now talk to 15 of those. Now I've talked to I've talked to 30 of my 50. And then on Thursday, I'm going to make a third attempt. And maybe I do it in the evening. And I connect with 10 of the remaining 20. So I wound up talking to 40 of the 50 rather than 15 of the 50 if I had just loaded them in a dialer and powered through. And yet on Thursday afternoon, when I had called those remaining 20 and ultimately talked to 40 of my 50, I was done with my most important work for the week. And what I would hear from my clients is that that's such a powerful feeling to know that I did my most important work and it was done. Because I don't know about you guys. I mean, this business feels like it can be a 24/7 tail wagging the dog business and you're never done. And to have your most important work, to have a beginning and end each week and to know you did it is extremely powerful. Now, here's one last discipline of DTD2, because it becomes your schedule for your entire real estate, career, because it takes you, there's 26 letters of the alphabet. You get through it in 13 weeks. 13 times 4 is 52. So it's a quarterly schedule. It takes you through each quarter. If I just have I get COVID or something happens with my family and I lose 2 weeks, if I just got a whole list in my database, it feels like I can never catch up. The discipline with DTD2 is if I miss a week, if I can catch that week up, great. If not, just begin with the DTD2 schedule where it is. You're always going to come right back around to it within a minimum of 13 weeks again. And so it just works. So the DTD2 schedule, it's in the link I sent out. I'm going to put it in here again. And remember, and each week has a theme. A&W is sweet success. In my market centers, we would always kick off A&W week with a root beer float party. Those that were committed to doing it, we just created some fun, with it. One of the market centers, B&E was the next week, and they would have bacon and egg tacos that they would bring. Have fun with this, create a theme. And most importantly, we created it because we found the reason people weren't calling their database is partly our own fault. We had taught people to be transactional, meaning chasing expireds, cold calling, for sale by owners. And we weren't really, going back to even Classic Bold, we weren't teaching people to build relational-based businesses. And of course, we know that that's everything today. It's the most important thing you do. And so it's 2 letters a week by alphabet of their beginning of their the first letter of their last name. So Anderson and Wilson, for example, on A&W week, and that becomes the discipline of doing the database too. Now, by the way, doing this, if we can get 100,000 agents across the Keller Williams ecosystem committed to DTD2, we will absolutely disrupt the real estate market, because you guys will build so many trust foundation relationships that the property tech companies, the people that are attempting to disrupt you, they won't be able to do it, because the relationship is more powerful than anything else. And you've gone and you've built a position. All right, so we're going to shift gears. So that's kind of a schedule to make sure that the conversations occur that are going to generate the empathy, the connection. And by the way, we're going to show how that you can be kind of authentic with another tool. And let me go ahead and pull the screen up here. And whoa, I want to go back to the conversation with Barbara. And some of you caught this as we were going through that. Is Barbara, when she called, simply had I hung up and I'm going, dang, I just got forwarded, because she asked about bold, and that, so that was an occupation question. She asked about Shelly, my girlfriend. That was a family question. She asked what we'd been doing for fun in San Antonio. It was a recreation question. What kind of future plans, big goals did we have? That was a dreams question. And I'm going, wow, I got forwarded. It was a conversation, and she did that amazingly. If somebody didn't know that was a formula for conversation or relationship building, they would have never known that. And she executed that amazingly. Now, by the way, when you're having conversations that create this empathy, you don't have to go through every forward point like she just happened to do. You might just frame the conversation with a couple of these to get the conversation started. In fact, in a moment, I'm going to demonstrate a script that's going to help you build that logic side to the conversation, while at the same time building the empathy side, and all doing it in a way that's authentically you. And forward becomes a big part of this. And I want you to write this down. There's something we call the forward sandwich. And it goes like this. And I don't have a slide here for you on it. And yet, let me just have you write it down. So I want you to write down bullet point, open with a forward question. Then second point, ask an appropriate follow-up question. Next point, get to the purpose of your call. Next point, ask a closing forward question with an appropriate follow-up question. So let me give you those bullet points again. Opening forward question, appropriate follow-up question, purpose of the call, forward question, appropriate follow-up question, and then close the call. And you can now take a script, create a conversation around it, and get through it in 6 minutes, 7 minutes. And people will feel absolutely connected with you. And we call this the forward sandwich, because we're going to sandwich the purpose of the call into a dialogue, into a conversation. And this becomes critical in our journey of really positioning ourselves, as the logic person, where I've got a business element to my conversations, to the empathy person, that I've got a care for them, and it's going to sound and come across being authentic. These are, again, those 3 steps. We've got to ask everything we do, is this building on trust? Is this either developing logic? Is it developing the relationship, the empathy? And is it authentic? And these are the questions we have to ask all the time with everything we do, so that we know that we're building trust. All right, here we go. So let me go back to, thank you for helping each other in the chat there, guys. I see y'all are chiming in, and helping each other with questions. Thank you for that. This is what we are. We're a community. And let me go to the screen again. I want to give you a couple of resources as we look ahead and you're diving into your year. Is a couple of books I would encourage you to put on your reading list, because all of this is about positioning. It's positioning ourselves as this trusted advisor. We go through a whole section on this in Never Ending Referral Session 5. Is we go through some of these positioning truths and how do I win that battle for the consumer's mind. And Reese Trout wrote 2 really great books. They're classics. Gary would talk about these constantly. One is called Positioning, The Battle for Your Mind, and the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And so when you think about the position you choose to create and you need some help on thinking strategy on how to create it, these can help, or just join us in Never Ending Referrals. We'll give you the highlights and help you do that as we go. But let me take you through this next piece. I want to take you through a logic conversation for a minute. And you see this guy scratching his head. He's got a question mark next to things like plumber and lawyer and dentist and financial planner and mechanic. And the question is, who is this person? And this person is your consumer who's moving into your area, who has left their entire world behind. And I'm going to give you one of the scripts that, in fact, I'm going to give you a link so you can download it in a minute. So don't worry about having to write it down or go for it word for word. When we get done here, I'll give you a link so you can go download it and put it to work. But here's one of the things as real estate agents, we often undervalue who we are in the community. And I want you to think for a moment that when somebody's moving new to your area, you're often the first, second, or third point of contact. And if I'm a business owner or a business manager, a local entrepreneur, and I serve people, and I begin to understand that you're the person who knows people moving to the area, I want to know you. And if you can help me understand that and position yourself that way, then I'm going to want to have a relationship with you. And so one of the best business building opportunities for you as you move into 2022 is, are you building, or have you built, a business to business database? Do you have 100, 150 local business managers, entrepreneurs, business owners in your database, and a strategy for that relationship and for nurturing that relationship and actually referring those people, and then they will refer you? And I'm going to give you a little script that's going to demonstrate to your database both logic, and it's also going to demonstrate, in fact, let me go ahead and put the link in now. Bear with me. It's on a Google Drive. You can download it. If you go to 5starconversation.com, link is there, www.5starconversation.com. You can go there and download the script I'm about to share with you. But I'm going to do it in a way that is going to demonstrate to you the Ford sandwich that we talked about. And so let's just say that I'm calling Tammy. Tammy's not with us today, and so I'm going to role play with myself. And I call Tammy and I go, "Hey, Tammy, Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams. Trust you're doing well. And hey, gosh, want to check in. I mean, COVID's going a little nutty again. And, you know, how things going with you and Bruce? Everybody healthy?" And now here we are. I'm demonstrating care. She goes, yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing really good. And been fortunate so far. I said, yeah. And I go, yeah, you guys still, jobs still have you working at home? How's everything going there? She goes, yeah, still working at home. And very appropriate follow-up question. And then I said, well, great. Hey, well, thanks for taking my call today. Hey, let me share with you why I called. Now you see, I just moved into Ford, follow-up question. Now I'm going to the purpose of my call. And you notice that I stated, let me share with you why I called today. because it is a business call. So Tammy, the reason I called today is I'm hoping you could help me with a little project we're working on. As you can imagine, we've got people moving into the area new all the time that are in need of services that they've left behind where they've moved from. And, we'd love to feature more of our local businesses that have really been struggling through the pandemic. And we really want to feature the best of the best. And we're putting together this 5-star directory of really great service providers for our friends like you and our clients and our network. And I'm just curious, Tammy, who's blown you away with just a great service experience in the last, month or so? And Tammy says to me, well, gosh, we just got our landscaping redone, and this company, Three Trees Landscaping, was amazing. And, we thought they would be messy, and they just did a really great job and was so neat, and they were professional. They just blew our socks off and just feel like we got great value. I said, wow. And I said, do you happen to have a contact over at Three Trees Landscaping I could reach out to you? And so she gives me Brent's phone number. And I asked her, I said, hey, Tammy, would it be okay when I reach out to Brent about including him in our directory? Would it be okay if I used your name that you had recommended him? And absolutely. Now, then I go to Tammy. I say, Tammy, maybe there's another relationship you can help, or introduction, I would say, that you could help me with. We're getting to that time of year where it's going to be tax season. And I know, last year I had a couple people ask me for a great CPA. And honestly, I don't have a 5-star CPA that I can refer. Do you happen to have an introduction you could make, for us with a really great 5-star CPA? She says, well, not really. I mean, I wish we did, but we don't. I don't think ours is, all that good. I wouldn't call them 2-star, but they're not 5-star. And I go, I get it. And I said, well, let me ask you this. When I come across that person, as vast as our network is, I know I'll find that person. When I do, would you like me to connect you? And she goes, yeah, that'd be great. And so what's going to happen now, I go through my calls, my DTD2, maybe for the next few weeks, I'm asking everybody that for that introduction of CPAs. I might get one, and yet I'm going to keep asking till I get maybe 2 or 3. Because what I'm also looking for is people that have that need for that introduction in my database. And then I can play connector. I think y'all are starting to see that possibility. And so then I go on into the conversation and say, Tammy, thanks so much for helping me with all this today. And hey, just, heads up too, is the market has been extremely crazy. We've seen values skyrocket, and yet affordability is still not too bad with interest rates really low. Is, anybody that we could maybe serve with either the opportunity of selling at a really high price right now, or maybe buying with these low interest rates? Anybody that we might be able to help or serve, maybe work or friends or family? And she goes, no, not really, not that I can think of. And I said, well, fantastic. Well, and what about you guys? Any big plans, coming up the year ahead, travel, otherwise? Tell me what y'all have in store. Now, you notice I'm going back to Ford now. I'm going to big plans, dreams, any big events coming up. And then maybe she starts to talk about son graduating from, high school or college. And I'm going, that's possibly a moving sign. Stay in touch more often. Or I'm going to make a note to ask about that in the 3rd quarter after graduation has occurred. And then we wrap up the conversation. I followed up on, asked about, she said her son was graduating from high school. And I go, wow, that's an exciting time. And that's the last one out of the house, right? She goes, yeah. I said, wow, what are y'all looking forward to in being empty nesters? And she says whatever she says, it doesn't matter. And then I make some notes in my database later when I go to update all my conversations, and then we hang up. So opened with Ford, got to the purpose of the call, closed with Ford. Now I want to go to the power of this 5-star question, or this 5-star conversation. Is think about the relationship equity I just built for Tammy with Brent over at Three Trees Landscaping. She's really in with them at a high level because she referred them. I now have a warm business to business conversation that I get to have with Brent when we talk about including them in the directory. Now, by the way, Tammy also feels good that I was doing something for her, because I was doing this for them and our other clients, so they would have great resources. So there's so many wins in this conversation. It's an easy one to start the year off with, and it's an easy one to build value around and really be that advisor. But here's the big part. Think about the CPA. Once I've identified a couple of CPAs, let's say I've got 15 people that would like an introduction to a great CPA. I might have 6 or 7 connections I can make with that new CPA relationship with people in my database. And I don't have to personally stand behind them. I go like, hey, these are some folks that came, from my research that my clients said are really great. You might want to give them a shout, find out if they'll work for you. And I create the connection. So we call it the 5-star script, the 5-star conversation. And it's something that it's a great go-to in the first quarter. It's very, if I sandwich forward in there, I get to ask about them, how they're doing. Are they holding up okay? And at the same time, I get to have a purposeful business conversation, adding value. I get a warm lead for a business person in my database. And then, of course, in Narrowing Referrals, we teach you, what those conversations look like with the business to business folks as well. But I want to leave room on the end here for some questions and let you guys raise your hand. Let me go back to the screen for just a second. And by the way, if you want to find out more about Never Ending Referrals, we invite you to go to mapscoaching.com, look at group coaching, and find out more about Never Ending Referrals. But here, I want to bring you into the conversation, and let's just recap what we covered. We go back to that trust triangle. And if you've got a question, I want you to go down to where it says reactions and raise your hand. And then I'll call on you and bring you into the conversation, with us. And, we'll dig into this a little deeper where you guys have questions. But we go back to that trust triangle. For me as a high assertive, it's much easier for me to work at building a position as the trusted advisor, to come across and I take the 5-star script. I'm doing something for you. I'm doing something professionally for you. I'm your professional real estate agent, your lifestyle concierge, all of that as your trusted advisor. Using the forward conversation, you got to experience empathy. And because I wasn't trying to be your best friend, which, years ago, my early mentor taught me, she said, Steve, you want to have a big business, just be everybody's best friend and you'll get a lot of referrals. For me, that was anxiety provoking. I didn't want to do that because it didn't feel authentic. And later I heard a gentleman named Howard Brinton talk about somebody who positioned themselves as the trusted advisor. And I said, I can do that. I can be that person. So that's finding your authentic way to connect becomes a big, big part of this journey. All right, let's go in here and see what we've got. I'm going to pull the chat over here. Yeah, don't wait for a lead letter. Use forward. Does NER have a Facebook group? It's the NER VIP Facebook group. Yes, we do. Just look for Never Ending Referrals VIP Facebook page. You'll find that. All right, who's going to chime in? And you got an aha, a question. Let's see. We've got Susan. I'm going to bring you in. So why don't you go ahead and join us in the conversation?
Hi, thank you, Steve. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you.
You too.
So when you're doing the DTD2 and you have contacts in your phone that you have absolutely no idea who they are, should we just still call and say hi?
I love that. Now, by the way,
what do I do?
If you have no idea who they are, the first thing I'm going to do is say, be careful of do not call regulations, right? Because if there's not an opted-in relationship, just be conscious of that. If you decide to
if they're in my cell phone though, I somehow got them either because I did meet them at an open house or
Possibly.
some time ago. Right.
Yeah, possibly. Right. And just whatever you need to do to feel like you're in compliance. If you feel comfortable, that's, I got to do the cover the rear part conversation here.
Right.
Yeah. And that is here's the thing. I love those when they come up. We call that the who the heck are you conversation. and I might call you up, Susan, and I go, Susan, hey, I'm looking for Susan. Hey, Susan, this is Steve Schlueter over at Keller Williams. And, I was just scrolling through some of my contacts today and I came across your name, and for life of me, I don't know where we connected. And did you happen to have a real estate need maybe a while back, or do you have any idea where our connection came from?
Oh,
and they go, yeah, I think we came to an open house you had, 2 years ago. And I go, wow, okay, got it. Well, you guys still in the market for the house? What's the latest? Tell me about your current situation. And then you can go right into a dialogue from there. It just really, just keep it real. People appreciate just authenticity, and that'll do that all day long. All right. How about you, Greg? Let me bring you into the conversation, Greg.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. This is Greg Davis from Houston, Texas.
Greg?
I simply wanted to know if you had any recommendations or scripts for the text letter portion of the DTD2.
Yeah, the text letter. Now, by the way we have the text set up is that the letters show up twice a year for the text letter, and it's just a supplement in there, and it's really pretty simple. Hey, just wanted you to know we're here to serve you. If there's anything you need at all, know you can always call on us. Simple. It's not a salesy thing. It could be around an event, or if you're doing something with charity, that's a nice thing to do as a text support. Keep it really simple, Greg.
Got it. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Who else is going to chime in? Thought, aha, question. Great how-to video for DTD2 Command Smart Plan. There's a link right there. Thanks, Alexander, for putting that in the chat. So if you look at the chat right now, Alexander Reed put in a great resource for Marty Miller on setting up your database DTD2 style. Let me go. Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, Steve, thanks for taking the time, busy holiday schedule, to help everybody out, share some info. My quick aha is the Ford sandwich of going back and forth. Mm-hmm. Never really applied that before, and that's something I'm going to work on that skill. So thank you very much. You bet.
And it is a skill because it's one of these things where the biggest challenge we have is we want to have a business conversation, but we don't want to feel like we're all business. And this really sets it up to authentically kind of just let that transition naturally. How are you doing? And by the way, especially if I'm not naturally social, I'm going to, and here's where it's so easy today, because as a society, we're all going through the same thing. And hang on a second. Everybody's dealing with COVID. Everybody's dealing with work disruption. Who knows? Maybe they're going to deal with school disruption again. And it's a rare time in history where everybody's going through the same stuff. And it takes opening the conversation real easy. Now, if I chose to, I could also do some social media stalking. I could go to Facebook and see, the week before I call my A&Ws, which would be this week, I'm going to go look at their profile on Facebook and what they do during the holidays. And when I call them up, said, hey, I saw you guys went to, Brackenridge. How was the snow? I heard it's been a little light this year. How was the trip? And I can use some social media stalking to get that started as well. So thanks for that. Yeah. All right. Take a couple more and then we'll put a bow tie on the day. Questions, ahas.
Anita's got her hand up.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Come on, Anita.
Hi, Steve. So I just wanted to make a comment and thank you very much for this wonderful class you're giving us. I have sent out a Christmas card to lots of folks over the last few years, and again, I sent one to Terry this year. I met him 4 or 5 years ago, briefly. A lender introduced him to me when this man was doing a refi. So I just stayed connected, but only through that particular way.
Mhm.
This year, I got a Christmas card from him. I just opened it up before your class started, and I've never gotten one from him before, but I said, aha, this way I can call him up and have a really great conversation with him.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah. Well, so it's the nurture over time. And by the way, don't worry about if people you haven't been in touch with. The phone works both ways, folks. And if they really wanted to talk to you, they would have called you. We have this hallucination, people in our database, that if I haven't talked to them in 3 or 4 years, that I'm going to pick up the phone and go, well, it's about damn time you called me. I've been waiting. They're not waiting. They're busy. Life has moved on, and they didn't know you were supposed to be calling them. They didn't think they were supposed to be calling you. And yet you make a reconnect and you're back in flow and say, hey, I just started publishing a newsletter. I'd love to keep y'all up to date. The real estate market's kind of crazy. I'd love to kind of keep you up to speed on things. Would that be okay? Make sure I've got the latest email address, and you're able to chime right in. All right. So last thoughts, folks. You might have a last question. All of a sudden the screen went kind of crazy there. So I'm not sure what happened. Guys, it's been a privilege to share a little time with you today. Thank you for that. Okay, go ahead, Jim. Come on into the conversation. Unmute yourself.
Hey there. So just a couple of things here. First is, we're a technology company. We have great technology. I am a tech trainer too. And the thing that I think gets lost a lot of times is that people think that the technology replaces these conversations, but what they do is enhance these conversations and allows you to maximize them. And I mean, it's huge. If you want to replace yourself with technology, you're never going to be successful. If you use the technology to build yourself and build those relationships, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to throw out there is in the past, there was always this divide between commercial and residential. There is such a great synergy between the two, especially with what the 5-star conversations are.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find yourself, if you have a relationship as a residential agent, to refer these businesses that you come across, that you have these conversations with, refer them to a commercial agent. That commercial agent, I guarantee you, is going to be returning that favor. There's a lot of business in-house.
Amen. Yeah. And by the way, in Networking Referrals, we'll walk you right through all those conversations to set those relationships up, because these business people are going to individually become part of your database as well as their business enterprise. And so there's so much untapped opportunity. Guys, I'm going to do a quick commercial. Networking Referrals. We start live again on Monday with our Market of the Moment script conversation. And every first Monday, we have KT Temple, who's one of the regional tech market center tech trainer, do a tech training on the first Monday. And we've got Market of the Moment scripts that we introduce at the beginning of each quarter. So we've got that Monday. And then the following Monday, we'll start back into the 8 lessons of Networking Referrals. And we're at noon Central. It's a new time on Mondays. And we start off with an interview, and then we go into a lesson. So it's 90 minutes of Networking Referrals. We used to be Mondays and Thursdays, and the feedback we got was put it all into one day, the interview and the lesson. So that's what we're doing. If you go to mapscoaching.com or neverendingreferrals.com, either way, you can find your way to find out more about that. And by the way, we're just $39 a month to be part of that and get these kind of conversations and real lessons for a powerful database. We've got people been with us for 2.5 years because our goal is here's our stated goal at Never Ending Referrals. It's to have you build a database business that gets you a 10% return, meaning if I've got 250 people in a database, I do 25 transactions. If I got 500, I do 50. And then at the same time, to over the next year, grow it by 250 or more. And that's our stated mission. And our bigger mission is to create an army of 100,000 database warriors, like Jim said, who are relationship focused, tech enabled, who will own their relationships. And when we do that, we become the disruptors in the marketplace, and nobody else can take the business away from us. So guys, it's been a pleasure. Have a great one. This recording will be on the MAP site if you want to go back to it at any time. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you on the journey through Never Ending Referrals. See you guys.